This voice is taken from an article with the title, How Do I Calculate Position Sizing for My Trades?, which has been published on TraderTalks.net. Position sizing is one of the most important aspects of trading, as it determines the amount of risk you are taking on each trade. Position sizing is essentially the process of determining how much of your trading capital should be allocated to each individual trade. The most common way to calculate position sizing is to use a risk management tool such as a risk-reward calculator. This tool helps you determine the amount of risk you are willing to take on a trade, and then calculates the position size based on the amount of risk you are willing to accept. Risk-reward calculators usually allow you to specify the amount of capital you are willing to risk on a given trade, as well as the risk-reward ratio you are seeking. The risk-reward ratio is a measure of how much you are willing to risk compared to how much you can potentially gain on a trade. For example, if you are willing to risk 2% of your capital on a trade with a potential reward of 4%, then your risk-reward ratio would be 2 to 4. Once you have determined the risk-reward ratio you are seeking, the calculator will then calculate the position size you should take on the trade based on the amount of capital you are willing to risk. The position size is usually expressed as a percentage of the total capital you are willing to risk. For example, if you have a trading capital of $10,000 and are willing to risk 2% of that capital on a trade with a risk-reward ratio of 2 to 4, the position size would be 2% of $10,000, or $200. This means that you would allocate $200 to that particular trade. It is important to note that the position size should always be proportional to the amount of capital you are willing to risk on a trade. For example, if you increase the amount of capital you are willing to risk to 5%, then the position size should also increase, as it should it'll be proportional to the risk you are taking on the trade. It is also important to note that the position size should never exceed the amount of capital you are willing to risk on a trade. For example, if you are willing to risk 5% of your capital on a trade, then the position size should never exceed 5%. Finally, it is important to remember that position sizing is an important part of risk management. As such, you should always ensure that you are taking on an appropriate amount of risk for each trade. If you are not sure how to calculate position sizing, then it is recommended that you seek the assistance of a professional trader or risk management consultant.